I wanted just to say hello and welcome to everyone that's on the line and to our panelists and our moderator to Swim Strong's 15th anniversary celebration. And our webinar is called Water Safety and Swimming Skills, the New Urgency and the New Opportunity. And I think that just a little introduction, I'm Shawn Slevin. I'm the founder and the executive director of Swim Strong. We are a 501c3 here in New York City, and our mission is to reduce unintended drownings and water-based accidents. And we do that in a traditional way in water, teaching the swimming skills. Out of water, we have a new environmentally focused water safety program called Know Before You Go, KNOW, Before You Go. And we also have initiated some legislation to mandate the training of water safety in New York State schools, K through 12. Those bills are Senate 2207 and Assembly 728. And we've given over 10,000, we've taught over 10,000 people now how to swim, given the in-school programming, I should say, to 12,875 people, and given over $1 million in free swim lessons to families that needed that help. So we're excited to be coming out of COVID and hopefully getting back into the pool. And I think many of you know that are on the call that drowning is actually a global epidemic. So while we've been struggling with this pandemic called COVID-19, drowning has been with us for decades, and it actually is affecting more people on a global basis, even than COVID is. And so you may or may not know this, but on a global basis, a person is dying actually every 70 seconds. And for every person who dies, there's 5 more people who are suffering life-altering brain and spinal cord injuries due to water-based accidents. And so we really do want to make a shift to get people to understand that swimming skills are important, understanding of water safety in the broader context of the world, turning incredibly more watery. We just came out of Ida, which for the New York City area, we had almost 50 people killed as a result of that storm. In Queens, where I live, 13 of those people were in their own basements. And so we need to really change this dynamic. So I'm going to turn this over to our moderator, Dan New, and ask him to introduce himself and our panel.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Shawn. This evening, I have the privilege of being a moderator to a panel of 5 esteemed guests, which I'm very excited about. Prior to them unpacking who they are and why they're going to be on our panel this evening, a little bit of background on me. My name is Dan New. I attended school at Florida State University. Upon graduation, I moved to New York, and I've been working in the infrastructure space ever since. Largely in a financial and strategy consulting role at KPMG. With that, one of my passions is triathlon, and that's largely how I got connected to Shawn. I started spending more time in the water and came across some very startling statistics associated with this drowning epidemic that Shawn brought up. She mentioned a couple of the international statistics, but I think it's also important to zoom in a little bit on the US and understand that there are about 4,000 fatalities attributed to drowning on an annual basis in the US alone, or 11 drownings per day that are fatal. So this is a very, very serious issue. And I think Swim Strong is just so well suited to attack it. Largely because of this platform, this flexible platform that they've put together of how to get people more comfortable in the water while also making progress outside of the water. In the water, obviously, Shawn has been an asset to so many New Yorkers and individuals in the Northeast through our in-person courses and teaching people how to swim. But then outside of the water, through Know Before You Go, and also Swim Strong's legislative efforts, the headway that's been made has been just absolutely phenomenal. and really, really important and meaningful. So without further ado, I'd now like to hand it over to the panelists for them to provide a little bit of background about who they are. So in this order, if you guys could just give a brief debrief on who you are and how you got connected to SwimStrong, that would be phenomenal. Eric, we'll start off with you. We'll go to you, Sabir, then you, Sadir, and then lastly, you, Jim.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Eric Gardner, and I grew up in California and was fortunate enough to have family that lived and still live on Catalina Island. And so as a result of that, really had the privilege of being able to be in the ocean pretty much every June to August for my entire life. And that led me to pursue, among other things, water polo and swimming in high school. And that led me to the Naval Academy, where I played collegiate D1 water polo. And I kind of kept building. And from there, went on to serve as a Navy SEAL officer. And when I was transitioning out of the military and into civilian life in New York, that's when I first met Sean, as I was trying to figure out somewhere I could kind of give back. And doing anything aquatic has always been kind of a key theme to who I was. And so I got involved as a volunteer coach. Ended up moving around a little bit and now back to New York, a little bit more busy with kids and family and career now. So no longer coaching, but was able to contribute to the Know Before You Go curriculum. And very happy to be here today to talk to everyone about swimming safety and just the role really of having the water in people's lives and why it's important, not just from a safety, but health perspective to be associated with it, be comfortable with it, and use it as a tool for growth.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. Sabir, if you could pop off mute.
Excellent. All right. Hi, guys. Thank you for the invitation. Sabir Muhammad. I am, let's see here, a swimmer by background. I guess I am distinguished as the first African-American to hold an American record in the sport of swimming. I was a 10-time American record holder and 25-time All-American at Stanford University, where my team won an NC2A championship in 1998. From there, I went on to compete at multiple world championships, World Cups, Pan Am Games, and the Pan Pacific Games. Distinguished also for winning the first international medal as a Black swimmer representing the United States. I am the founder of the Atlanta Swim School. I'm originally from Atlanta, and I'm also the author of Born to Swim, a children's book about a kid's experience learning to swim for the first time. I've been connected to Sean via my participation on the USA Swimming Black Leadership Council, Team Black, and got the introduction to Sean from one of my colleagues, Maritza Correa, who is distinguished in her own right as a pioneer in the sport of swimming. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Sabir. Sadir?
Hi, folks. My name is Sudhir Gad, and I'm a psychiatrist here in New York, board certified attending psychiatrist for the last 20 years, trained at Stony Brook and then at NYU, and worked at Bellevue for about a decade. And now I'm in private practice and I work as a medical director at an addiction treatment center in the Lower East Side. So usually I'm swimming in the minds of people, which are deeper than the deepest waters. And I wasn't a natural swimmer. I don't know about you guys. I wasn't born on Catalina Island. I'm an Indian immigrant, and we have our own fears of swimming. But I think it was the love of curiosity and the anger that I was not capable and not allowed to swim that furthered me into, depths and still does. So I'm also a Navy commander in the medical corps. And I guess I lend the components of fear, really, right? I talk to people about fear and love every day. And I think that applies here. So I hope that I can shed some light on the epigenetics and how we get people to say yes to trying to swim.
Marvelous. Thank you for that, Sadir. Last but certainly not least, Jim, how are you?
All right, Dan, thank you. Hi, everybody. Good evening to our guests. My name is Jim Bolster, and I am the men's swim coach at Columbia University here in New York City. And I'm starting my 38th year at Columbia. Sean sought me out and just introduced herself via email. And upon reading about her foundation and her efforts, I was immediately drawn to trying to help in any way that I could. At Columbia, in order to get your diploma, you must pass a 75-yard swim test. So for 38 years, I have been teaching people how to swim. And so here, as you mentioned, I start with the idea of fear. That's a really important component to learning how to swim. And it is a very natural instinct. If you're not fearing the water, that's when you get into trouble. So I'm excited to be a part of this group. And I might add that Sabir, I believe you swam for Swim Atlanta. And Dynamo?
No, City of Atlanta Dolphins, but I think one of my swimmers swam for you in the last few years. Have you had a kid?
Cox.
Yeah, Cox.
Yes.
City of Atlanta Dolphins.
Yes. But you were part of, there were two guys that started that program as one of the first sort of, I think, outreach programs or programs that tried to reach inner city kids, Black kids, minority kids.
Well, the background on me. So I grew up swimming in the City of Atlanta Dolphins Swim Club, which was started by a Black man here in Atlanta in the 80s. And it grew to be one of the largest swim clubs in the country. It was based in Atlanta Parks and Rec. So a lot of people are familiar with Jim Ellis and PDR. We had our own version of that here in Atlanta, the City of Atlanta Dolphins.
Cool.
Real. Great to see the underlying connection here, and thank you to the panel for introducing yourselves. I think many of your stories resonate with those that Swim Strong serves, and that there's so much diversity that's present on this panel, and so many reasons why you're connected to the sport of swimming. So with that, the rest of the evening is going to entail us diving into about 5 questions or so with varying input being provided from each panelist. So the first thing that comes to mind, I think this is a very fair starting point. The sport of swimming entails a lot of mind and body connection. If the panel could opine on why the sport has been an asset to you through a challenging juncture in your life, and even more specifically, if you can speak on this, how the skills that you learned in swimming helped make you a better leader, that would be phenomenal. So Sadir, it'd be great to start off with you.
Sure, thank you. So I'll just stick with the mind body and that component, and I'd like to adjust it to brain body, right? Because what fear looks like in the brain is an electrical traffic jam, more or less. Okay, the brain is a series of electrical pathways, almost infinite in the amount of roads and intersections that it has. And when you are able to see this on a variety of scans, whether they're fMRIs or PET scans or SPECT scans, or just in reality, it is a lodging of fear within the amygdala, which are 2 almond-shaped clusters of electrical nuclei, dead center, right there, all the way in the center of the brain. And so if that is hot, it means that everything that turns you on and to ready to fight or flee is activated. You're either going to freeze or you're vigilant. And traumatic experiences of all kinds, but especially physically traumatic experiences, turn those on and they stay on. So, to be able to loosen that traffic jam is something that we want to talk about and work on because once you can do that, you can open up pathways of love, really. And I think that, I'm happy to talk later about how I get people to yes in smoking and vaccine talk these days. I present not just the worst possible outcome, but the best outcomes that they could achieve. So yeah, you're not going to get lung cancer if you stop smoking, but your sense of smell will return. Your bank account will be a little bit heavier, and your health will overall improve. And it's in terms of the vaccine, it is, that I care about you. And I want to save you from a condition that I had. COVID sucks. It's preventable now. Let's just get this out of the way. So from swimming, you can't just reduce fatalities and potentially save someone. You could start really living. It is a lot of fun to be able to swim. And someone said it earlier, Dan, you said it, in and out of the water. If you can learn to swim, it helps you outside of the water. It helps you elevate from water to the air, metaphorically, potentially. Your life improves with this capability. And for the most part, African Americans and people of color have been kept from this for so long that it has seeded that fear within the brain. It was in my brain, put into me by my mother, who still can't swim. Neither can my dad. Doesn't stop him from jumping in the water sometimes like a maniac, but I had to overcome this on my own. So I think that if we posit to kids, at this point it's 60 to 30 almost percent. 60% of white kids can swim, and 30%, of black kids can swim. So it's a double of the loss of capability there. If we can use love and anger, as well as what Jim said, the requirement, potentially talk about legislation to get kids to graduate, Regents diploma now includes a fourth R, relaxing in the water, easing the fear.
Tim, if I can just jump in on that, the comment about bringing people to yes or to love, I often find myself focused on the negative, you're going to die. We don't want you to die. And it's hard for me to shift that conversation, not because I don't see the benefits or the joys, the absolute joys of swimming, but it's just because my fear, I want to prevent. These tragedies are largely preventable. And so I tend to focus on the negative myself and trying to shape that dialogue a little bit more positively. It might be even more beneficial.
Yeah, marvelous. Eric, over to you. I know Sudhir brings up this concept of fear. You certainly have gone head up with fear in your prior life. So would love to hear you opine a little bit, please.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of this kind of mind-body connection, I think for me at least, water or the prospect of swimming has always been there for me at big transitions in my life, right? So I actually initially chose to try and apply to the Naval Academy and go there because I was able to visit the D-Day beaches in France as a high schooler. And I walked out on Omaha Beach, saw what had happened there at a very intense transition zone, and thought I could be something, larger than myself. And when I transitioned from high school to water polo, high school to college, I kept playing water polo. That really helped me kind of socially adjust to that. And everyone I got on the team with, there was a large percentage of the water polo players that ended up wanting to go to SEAL training, which was kind of the next level of kind of encountering your fear in the water. And I can tell you, having gone through SEAL training, there are people that show up that are, Ironman triathletes, they're D1 swimmers, and turns out everyone's scared of the water when they get put in the right circumstances, no matter how prepared you are. And that is a very humbling experience and one that I think helps re-baseline you, but they build you back up with your skill. Phase 2 of basic underwater demolition school in the SEALs is all water. And there's several tests that are involved in that. But at the end of the day, they teach you how to basically go through 10 steps. And no matter what you're doing, if you go through those 10 steps, you will eventually breathe and you won't die. And that was a kind of incredible journey to go through and kind of added to my view of the water. And especially after having, I deployed to Afghanistan and came back and decided to transition to being a civilian. And really water was there for me during that transition. It was a way for me to kind of have a constant in my life and give back through Swim Strong, but also swim myself. And now I think I'm really excited to hopefully teach my 15-month-old twins how to swim and keep that cycle going in the same way. But I really think that it's a space where you can actually achieve flow in a way that you cannot in a lot of life. People talk about the flow of a news feed. That's BS. That's not real flow. When you're in the water, you are somewhere between being in a dream state and awake, and that's not replicable anywhere else. And I feel like that actual connection helps you focus in on yourself and achieve really great things.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm sure Coronado trained you to potentially be able to handle 2 twins at once in the water. We'll see.
You'd think so. I was not prepared.
Excellent. Jim, over to you.
What was the original question?
Certainly. Yeah, so there are a couple parts. Feel free to dissect this as you please. The importance of a mind-body connection that's fostered through swimming is one part. Next, the sport of swimming being an asset through a challenging juncture in your life, or maybe one of your athletes' lives, provided your very illustrative career. And then how swimming has made you a better leader on the back end. So 3 parts. Feel free to take all 3, 1, 2 of them.
Yeah. Well, the first part of that, how swimming has played a role in my life. I wouldn't say that it is played a critical moment in that. It's what I do for a living. So it's shaped my entire life. I was never at a critical point where knowing how to swim made a difference, but knowing how to teach swimming has certainly made a huge difference. There's probably, I enjoy college coaching without a doubt. I wouldn't still be doing it if I didn't, but perhaps the greatest joy for me is teaching these kids at Columbia who don't know how to swim. And Calc 3 and linear equations and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to figure out whether you'll ever use that and how important it is. But swimming is a life skill, and it alters a kid's view on life, as Sadir alluded to. It is a huge self-esteem moment. It's a skill that everybody should have. You never know when you're going to need it. And for me, in teaching the kids, it's not negative at all. When you go by a swimming pool in the summertime, kids are jumping in, laughing, screaming. And I say to them, don't you want to be a part of that? It's 96 degrees out, hot as hell, and you can't get in. And there's no reason that you can't. Because at some point, everybody in that pool was just like you, had a fear of swimming, and probably wouldn't go near the water. But look at them now. So it's a matter of confidence, control, and understanding. The second part here, the connection between your mind and body. And there's a great saying in the swimming world that the body achieves what the mind believes. So learning how to swim, it is an incredible experience, and it's fun. It has nothing to do with fear. It has everything to do with understanding your fear and why it's there. But step by step, we teach them how to overcome that fear and to realize that you'll never have a better friend than the water. It gives you instant feedback, and you'll never find a friend that consistent. Every time you dip your foot in there, you realize, oh, there's a temperature to that water. There's a wetness to that water. And that is there every single time that you get into the water. It never changes. You're always probably going to say, "Ooh, that's cold," for one, the first comment that you make. So I think that it's important. Sean mentioned that she too often maybe approaches it from a negative standpoint. And, I think that understanding that some things can happen to you if you don't know what you're doing, at some point, safety is important, but it should be a joyful experience, and it is reaffirming, self-affirming. It's wonderful for self-esteem. So it has brought me a level of joy that, I get a level of joy if a kid swims really fast and wins, but I don't know if it rivals what I get from teaching these kids and the notes that they send me at the end of the year. So like their graduation from 5th grade or 8th grade. I mean, it's just really, it's a heartwarming experience to go through.
Thank you for that, Jim. Sabir?
Hey there. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything else that's been said so far, so eloquently. I'll talk a bit about my experience with the water and draw an analogy to a children's book. I love children and I love their experiences. And that's part of the reason why I drafted a children's book around the sport of swimming and an experience of learning to swim. I'm sure everyone here has heard of the book, The Giving Tree. Well, for me, and that was one of my favorite books as a kid. But for me, really, the learning to swim and my experience with the water was a great proxy to that story. As a kid, I loved to go to my neighborhood pool. I spent summers splashing and having fun with my friends. And that's all I needed at that stage in my life. Eventually, it was time to get a job and, provide for myself as a young teenager. And I relied on my skills that I learned as a swimmer to get my first job as a lifeguard. And I lifeguarded. That was my only job really until I became a professional swimmer. And then, after that, after swimming and learning to swim and competing, I was offered a full scholarship to Stanford University, which is a considerable expense to compete on the men's swimming team there. And it was the sport of swimming that really afforded me that experience and that opportunity. And after I finished at Stanford, I moved to the Olympic Training Center and lived there and traveled the world representing the United States national team. I swam in places like Africa and Europe and Australia, and all of these experiences, again, afforded by swimming. And so now at this stage in my career and my life, it's all about what can I do to give back to this sport that's given so much to me. And so when you ask the question, how has swimming contributed to me becoming a leader, I would say I take it a step further, that swimming is really in my DNA and it's made me the person who I am today.
Excellent. Barbara, I see that you just joined us. How are you?
Yes. Hi, I'm sorry. I was at the pool, believe it or not. I'm a swimming official. And the meet got started late. I had to drive in from Long Beach. I was trying to rush it along, but I couldn't get those kids to swim any faster.
We're happy to see you, Barbara.
So I apologize for that.
No worries. Welcome to the party.
Thank you.
Maybe just provide a brief snapshot of who you are and why you're connected to SwimStrong. And then the timing was quite excellent. We just queued up our first question, so I'll repeat that.
Okay, great. Okay, my name is Barbara Cronin-Stagnari. I started swimming in high school. I didn't swim before that. I was a Rockaway Beach lifeguard in the 80s, so way back when. Then I entered triathlons. I've done 23 Ironman. I've done Kona 7 times. I've probably done 150 triathlons. Currently I'm a Jones Beach lifeguard. So I work on the ocean, just worked on the ocean 3 months in a row here. And a lot of that is my concern. I have 4 kids, married 33 years, I have to count right. Master swim coach, swimming official. My life somehow resolves all around the water all the time.
Wow, that's powerful. I thought that my Ironman involvement doing 2 halves was decently notable.
Then you have to stick the tattoo together then.
There we go. Fair. So with that said, thank you. Thank you for the background there. Question for you that should be quite direct. How has the sport of swimming been an asset to you, provided the varying capacities in which you've interacted with the water?
Oh, it's really been everything. It provided me with a vocation because I'm a swimming official. I'm an ocean lifeguard. I'm a master swimming coach. More importantly, almost, it provided me with a great social life circle. Most of my friends are swimmers. I'm friends with all of the high school kids that I have coached and that I see at the swim meets. Many of them are triathletes or lifeguards. So I find swimming a very, very fun and very social environment. In fact, at the swim meet today was a daughter, and I went up to her and I said, I swam with your father in high school. So it seems to be a big circle.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Barbara. Moving on, there's a push in so many elements of our lives for diversity and inclusion to be a focus, and rightfully so. So with that, how do we increase diverse representation in the sport of swimming? I think, Sabir, starting off with you, I'd be really interested to get your take.
It's a great question, and it's one I'll just offer my lens on this. So, when you say representation in the sport of swimming, I'll just boil it down to how do we get more people of color into the sport? And so for me, one of the distinguishing factors about the sport of swimming is that I believe that it is a generational skill. And I define generational skills to be those that are transferred down from one generation to the next, right? So everyone here, you probably learned how to cook an egg. Like, who taught you how to cook an egg? Like, it was your parents, right? So cooking is really a generational skill. And there are other kind of generational skills that we learn, oftentimes learning to read or learning to write. And so swimming is also one of those skills. I believe it to be a challenge in African-American communities and communities of color, wherein that skill set was missing or removed from a generation. And for, Black Americans, we can point to the 400 years of slavery that for all intents and purposes abolished the sport of swimming from African culture. If you look at Africans prior to the slavery period, Africans were the best swimmers in the world. In many places, Africans were used as pearl divers. The value of pearls exceeded the value of gold for many, many years. And African swimmers were used as pearl divers to retrieve those pearls. So when you think about the history of Africans in water being located in temperate waters compared to frigid, cold waters of Europe, you have to understand that this is something that's a systemic problem that resulted from the removal of that skill set from multiple generations. So now I believe the way we get more kids into the sport of swimming is to get more families involved and to get those families teaching their children to swim in the water. So one of the things that we do at the Atlanta Swim School is we have parent-taught classes with families. Oftentimes mothers are learning to swim at the same time as their children. And we feel like that is important because it removes this notion that swimming is something foreign and that only our children should be doing, but we're trying to get the entire family to embrace it. So, my thinking is swimming has to start in the homes and the communities of the communities that have lost touch with their connection to the water. And I think if we do that, we can increase the rates, not overnight, but we can increase the rates of learning to swim in communities of color.
Thank you,
If I
Sabir.
can just jump in on that just for a moment. I discovered that too. When we started our Learn to Swim program, we were child-facing only. And it was really through discussion with the parents and in some cases grandparents of those children to discover that they didn't have swimming skills either. And so we dealt with it in the same way, Sabir. We basically said, everybody into the pool, let's go. But I do wonder what you think. To me, what we've heard, Sudhir and I did a program at St. John's University, and one of the things when we asked this question, we heard from our audience was the fact that swimming was no longer, to your point, they're missing generations with the skill, but it was no longer a priority. So how do we bring the priority piece to the fore? You're on mute.
Yeah, the prioritization, I guess, is when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, well, if you don't exist in coastal communities and don't depend upon the water, how can it be a priority? So, I said earlier in my discussion about how swimming helped me to get my first job, how it helped me with my education, how it helped me see the world. All of those things are really priorities: education, income, seeing the world as part of education. So I think what we have to do is translate the opportunities presented by swimming to the people that need to learn.
Thank you.
Well put, Sabir. Jim, interested in your input here.
You're on mute, Jim.
Yeah, I'll get this technology down. The answer is it's not simple. It's not easy. It involves, I think that U.S. swimming has made outreach. Whether I don't have enough statistics on it, but I think it's programs such as Sean's, such as Sabir's in Atlanta, that will lead the way. I also believe that it should be modeled by the groups, though, that we feel are underserved. So my going into a Black community and teaching kids how to swim, I don't think it would be nearly as effective as Sabir or Leah Neal or somebody that's had some, not even somebody that's famous. Somebody that's from the community that knows how to swim. Those are the people that should be, I think, leading the effort, because my guess is that it would be a lot more impactful if, a Black athlete, or not even, a Black lifeguard, was teaching the kids of that community how to swim, as opposed to someone such as myself. So I think that that's one step that would be a really significant drive to change this effort. I think that there are a lot of statistics, but there's not as much action behind that. And so I think that the communities that we're trying to serve need to play a larger role and be the people that do a lot of the instructing and leading.
Thank you, Jim. Barbara?
I think he's right. I think there's a bunch of this many multi things going on here where having a young Black lifeguard be a role model to these children where the kids can look up and say, well, if he can be a lifeguard, I can be a lifeguard. But the bottom line is, I think the more instructors you have, the better. A minority instructor is probably your best, but that might be a limited supply. I think you have to I think the big thing is accessibility. You've got to get kids to the pool. You have to make it affordable. If you're worrying about paying the rent, you're not paying your kids to have swimming lessons. Not even a thought in your mind. We see many families at the beach, and mostly minority, at least where I work, and the kids don't swim, and the parents don't swim, and the grandparents don't swim. They all go in the water thinking they can swim, but they can't swim. And it is very much a generational thing. So I think accessibility is the big thing. They need to be able to go to the pool, maybe something in the neighborhood. It has to be either free or very low cost. New York State Parks at Jones Beach this summer ran a Learn to Swim program. It was totally free. They ran it in the morning for kids and adults at night. The problem is I don't think they had enough outreach and people did not know about it. But I think you're right as far as if the grandparents don't swim, the parents are not going to swim, the kids are not going to swim. So role models would be huge. Okay, but if there are not enough, get anybody in there, like Sean says, get the kids in the pool, get the adults in the pool.
Thank you, Barbara. Sudhir?
Thanks, Dan. So diversity first. I love diversity because the opposite is inbreeding. Frankly, DNA is meant to be recombined. When it's not, there are bad outcomes. And when you have, even in the gut, a lack of diversity, it's actually problematic for health. It's actually problematic neurologically, mentally, digestively, immunologically. We know this now, that gut diversity changes over time. It's very diverse when you're a young kid, when you're, quote, regular, and when you don't have to give a forethought to whether you're going to poop today or not. And it's different when you're an older person, and then you start taking laxatives to help you, but you don't actually change your diet, etc. But so diversity is good from DNA to the gut, to the boardroom, to society. It's always good. Barriers have been there. I mean, Sudhir mentioned them, right? 500 years. I didn't know the fact about pearl divers. Fascinating. And they weren't just there in slavery. They were there in terms of access, like Barbara was talking about, access to pools. They were forbidden to even enter pools. They were segregated. They weren't even given pools to swim in. They still are not. People of color in those, just count up how many pools there are in the Bronx. Not that many. Pools of blood, plenty. But there aren't. I go to Coney Island. There's no pool there that I can visibly see between the theme park to the Russians. There's no pool anywhere, and except their gated communities. So access has to be a big part to undo this. But we're in a crisis situation. Like this lecture's topic is, it's an urgency. Last 2 weeks ago, the waters in Queens were waist deep on the BQE. There's no going back anymore. We're not going to do this gently anymore in terms of come have a pool party. It's free. Come over there. This is now or never. And it has to be an educational requirement, I think, where we're going to give it to you for free. There's no barrier. There's no stick, but you're not going to get a diploma either if you can't swim, because we need a capable people. And as far as priority, the last point, I think we got to go beyond the pragmatic of can you swim and it's going to help me in my job search. Absolutely. it could take you around the world like it has Mr. Muhammad, but it could open up different pathways outside of fear that have been preventing you, whether it's asking and demanding the appropriate pay for your work, or pushing yourself beyond your limits in other athletic endeavors. Certainly it's going to improve your health, to asking that girl out, to just having less fear in general. That's a good thing. That's a priority every time.
Thank you, Sudhir. Eric?
Yeah, so one of the most pernicious myths I ever encountered in the military was that somehow someone's ability to swim was biologically determined or related to race or ethnicity. And just nothing could be more, further from the truth. And I say that not from official policy from the military, but just culturally what you hear, right? Yeah. And I had to correct that when I was in. And, everyone certainly has a different buoyancy. That's definitely true. But everyone can swim. We are all mammals, and we're all we are, I think, the only animal that actually learns how to swim. It is not born with an innate sense of it. In that sense, it's part of our culture. And it is, in terms of increasing, diversity in it, I think it is all about access. And I had the honor of being a Senate staffer on a committee when I was, after I left the military, before I came to kind of the business world. And I still believe in the legislative process. And there's a lot of money, huge sums of money being talked about for infrastructure right now. There's no reason that pools couldn't be a part of it. It is simply a matter of getting in the ear and making yourself a problem for whoever represents you. And I think that more pools and increased access to pools is certainly important for diversifying. However, the one thing that is free is outdoor swimming. It should be approached with safety and caution and with the proper curriculum before you need to know before you go. But it is free. And when you are in the water outside, whether that's in a lake, whether that's paralleling the beach and swimming, you are also in touch with the terrible things that we're doing to this planet. And it's an added benefit of that too. So I think that safer, encouraging safer outdoor swimming really on all seasons. I used to live in Chicago for 2 years, and I used to swim every Saturday with a group, and it wasn't for very long, and it was with a wetsuit in January, but it was fun, and it was cleansing, and it's a great way to kind of, I think, still maintain that skill. And I think approaching the outdoors as something that's a free resource for you after perhaps you learn how to swim in a pool is a way to get more people out there, because they just need access. That's the only thing they need is access and a teacher.
Thank you, Eric. So next, want to take this conversation in two directions. We have some individuals who have swam competitively and are still active in the water, and then we have others who are a little bit more passive and are supporting Swim Strong and the organization's other endeavors. So feel free to take either route with this two-pronged question. Question is this: how would you describe the current state of competitive swimming? And then furthermore, what will swimming look like in the future in your perspective? Subir, let's start off with you.
Thanks, Dan. And my apologies, everyone. This is going to have to be my last question. I've got 4 kids. I didn't mention that, and I've got to get to them. So the future of competitive swimming, I think that's an excellent question. And honestly, I wish I could answer that question saying the future of competitive swimming will be, diverse. We will see people from every ethnicity at the highest levels of the sport in just a few years. But, that I don't think that's going to be the case. And the reason why is the problems that all of us are speaking to right now. Problems of access. The sport of swimming is an extremely expensive sport. I believe it was Barbara that said, if swimming lessons aren't free or low cost. It's just cost prohibitive for most families. So how are we going to address this chasm and change the sport of competitive swimming? I think it starts at the learn to swim level, and it starts with access, and it starts with really incentives to children. Like you want to have fun, you want to go to another state to compete and see and stay in a hotel room and have a great time. Well, it's going to be funded by this group, and you'll be able to compete. But even myself, like I would not have been a competitive swimmer if I did not have the city of Atlanta Parks and Recreation's budget supporting me as a competitive swimmer. So I think it's a pipe dream to think that the sport is going to dramatically change until we find ways to create more access and more affordable ways for people from every different background to participate.
Marvelous. Thank you, Sabir. Enjoy your kids. Barbara, provided your closeness with the water recently, within what seems to be the last hour or so, would
Every
love
day,
your
yes. I swam it. I coached at 6:30 this morning. I swam at 7:30. Yes.
So where do you see swimming going?
I think you will get some more minority swimmers, but it's going to be very slowly. We see a large influx of Asian children and Asian high school swimmers coming along. I haven't seen the other minority groups in any kind of great numbers. And I think it all comes down to economics. And again, families. If grandma doesn't swim, then the mother doesn't swim, and the father doesn't swim, and the kids don't swim. Taking their kids to the pool is not a priority. They don't think about the kids learning to swim until the kids go in the ocean. They don't think about themselves until they go in the ocean. They go in the pool. So not only should it be accessible, okay, it has to be close, it has to be accessible, it has to be affordable, and it has to be made, if not a priority, at least important. Never mind competitive swimming, and all the wonderful things that competitive swimming can do for you. At the grassroots, it saves your life. I can't tell you how many people I have pulled out this summer who cannot swim at all and don't think of anything. They go right in the ocean. They don't even think that, well, by the way, I can't swim. Maybe I shouldn't go out so far. So it's great to have all the advantages of competitive swimming. But to tell you the truth, it's really middle class to upper middle class and high class. It's an expensive sport. And if your friends are not swimming, you're not going to swim. You're going to play basketball. You're going to do baseball. You're going to do something else, whatever your friends are doing. So you need to get, somehow you have to make it important enough for the parents to actually take the kids swimming and take those roadblocks out. It's got to be affordable. It's got to be close. And the kids going to want to do it. The parents have to understand that swimming is important.
Thank you, Barbara. Sudhir?
Well, I'm optimistic. I wish I could have relayed this to Sabir better. I love the title of his book. It's Born to Swim. And we're really born from swimming, right? Not just males who have swimmers, but the egg swims as well. Okay. They both got together because they were swimming already, and then they create a fetus that is treading fluid. We are born from that, and we flock to the ocean every summer. There is no traffic jam going upstate. There has not been one ever since Woodstock. No one's going to the mountains in droves. Okay, we love the beach. We go to the beach because we're from the water, whether it's fish, whether it's eggs, all of the above. So the future of this sport is just like every other sport, going to head to diversity. 40 years ago, you had Russian gymnasts and such. Now you have Dominique Dawes. 40 years ago, you had Chris Evert. Now you have the Serena Williams show, right? The future is darker, is faster, is browner. It is everywhere going that way. But we say the word expensive sport. This is an elemental skill. And I think government is going to have to recognize that we're going to only build a capable and happy society by including this in the curriculum. They do it in the Nordic countries. They have diversity in Sweden too. Not as much as us, I know, but they don't have these issues. It's an absolute skill to learn there before a certain level of education is completed. If we can take ridiculous classes like woodworking and home ec nonsense that is outdated, why can't we spend time in a pool? Because every high school has it. Why are we just smacking heads on the fields and getting CTE and instead not getting in the water? It absolutely must be done. So should yoga and DBT, but we're born to and from swimming. We should do this, and we're headed to a better place. I believe that.
Amen. Eric, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I'm not as connected to competitive swimming now, certainly. And to be honest with you, I did competitive swimming so I could be fast enough for water polo. But I can tell you that, and I also wanted to recognize Tess's question. So I think that's a great point, Tess, about, listen, the gear reflects who's predominant in the sport, right? And that has to grow, to change, to allow for the ease of everyone to be able to swim. Gear is critical. But I think in terms of what the future of swimming is, I hope that it's seen more as a critical life skill that's built into the pipelines of professions, right? So I think that Sean has been really great at this and Swim Strong in terms of giving people skills that they can then translate into whether they're going to become a first responder. Or I know that basically that Sean and Swim Strong have taught people how to swim that have gone into military, law enforcement, first responders, public safety. I think that I hope that competitive swimming is seen as not just a means to an end in terms of like building your confidence and knowing how to work on a team, but also a critical kind of career milestone for activities that you might take in the first or last phase of your career.
Thank you for that, Eric. And thank you for shedding light on Tessa's question as well. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm in the business, so I guess I'm hoping that it remains pretty positive, strong. I do think that swimming as a sport gets a big lift every 4 years with the Olympics. It used to be that the United States was pretty dominant. I wouldn't say that's the case so much anymore. However, I would tell you that it's mostly countries of the same color that is dominant in the sport. And I think that that's unfortunate, but I do think that swimming, when you talk about competitive swimming, I mean, there's certainly, I think that there's several different levels to it. The collegiate / Olympic level, I think that the sport is in pretty good shape. There's an international swim league that has meets all around the country. So the sport itself is trying to be more of a presence. It's a professional league, the International Swim League, and they take mostly, the teams are made up of mostly Olympians. So there's a high recognition value when they travel to different countries in the world, cities in the world, to have these dual meets. So I think that at that level and the collegiate level, it's in pretty good shape. But I think competitive swimming at the age group level, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, as several people have pointed out. It's rather expensive. It's people of color, minorities don't have the same level of access that most white kids have, and that is, that's going to keep the sport from becoming diverse, which, as Sudhir mentioned, that's really the future of the sport. If it's going to be successful, the color of it has to change. And I think that it is important, though, to realize that, at Columbia, as I said, I teach this beginning swimming class. And I think Tess asked a question or pointed out something in one of her questions about the gear that the kids use to swim. And there is a website for Muslim women to purchase all the necessary gear that they need to take my class. That used to be that they wouldn't take it, or they had to have a special class where there were no men. The pool was locked so that only Muslim women could take the class because of the dress that was required. And that's no longer the case. They're allowed to, there are websites that will outfit Muslim women. There's this bathing cap out that's now out for, it's geared towards Black women in particular who, hair reacts to water differently. And that's part of the reason that they haven't taken to the sport, is that, the attention their hair requires after they get out is significant, and no one has made any caps or anything that would, cater to those differences. So I do think that the sport is aware that diversity and inclusion is the key to continued success. And I want to think that, we're going to do that at the grassroots levels to make those changes and to increase the popularity of the sport for everyone.
Thank you, Jim. Next, we're going to dive into more direct questions for each of the panelists. And Jim, I'd like to stick with you first. Curious about how long it typically takes for someone to swim. And if you've ever encountered someone who hasn't been able to learn how to swim.
Well, that varies with each individual. And it's really important that, at least for me, that I teach from that standpoint. I could teach somebody to swim in 10 minutes if they wanted to really learn how to swim and had no fear. But there's some kids that I work with, and the semester is 16 weeks long, and it takes us 14 weeks to learn to swim. So a lot of it goes back to the first question that we asked about mind body. Learning to swim is all about building a relationship with the water. And there are kids who pick up that relationship instantly. They learn to trust the water, they feel the support of the water, and they can make strides in leaps and bounds within, 10, 15 minutes. There are others, it takes a really long time for them to develop that trust and that relationship with the water. So you kind of have to recognize that. And by no means is there sort of a standard that if you teach a kid these 3 skills or these 3 things in the water, that they'll learn how to swim instantly. So it requires a lot of patience, a lot of recognition as to where the swimmer is coming from, and sort of what their issues are. Everybody relates to the water differently. So I don't think there's a simple answer to that. I have taught people how to swim, as I say, within 5-10 minutes, and some people it's taken a lot longer.
Got it. Thank you. Sudhir, you're trained as a psychiatrist, And that's a very interesting perspective to have on the panel. Curious about how you advise people overcome fear, and specifically how that can relate to the sport of swimming.
Yeah, so I like to say that love can conquer fear. It certainly can, but anger can as well. And so it's a combination, right, of these two things that I think we can apply to getting people to eventually simply enjoy swimming. To be able to say, look, you're going to love what the results are. You're going to love being able to do this. This is not just about avoiding the fear of drowning. This is about gaining the love of a connection to this planet that you do not have, but it is within your DNA. It is there. If you unlock this, it is like unlocking a portal to God. If you can do this, you're going to write the letters that Jim gets. And you're going to feel something you don't know. And it's been kept from you. It has been kept by society, by your parents, by even yourself. So use that anger to say, I'm not going to let anyone keep this kind of straight, deep gate to love from me anymore. You know, I've been in the Navy as well as a medical officer, and a few conversations resonate, both obviously with Black gentlemen who swim well, right? One was a chief diver, and this guy's an absolute juggernaut, right? Built like a Mack truck. And I was talking with him. I said, you know, Chief, I have to be on this panel. This is interesting that I get to talk to you. Give me a second. You have 5 kids, I think. How did you learn to swim? How did you teach them to swim? And he said, you know what? It's simple. I said, this has been kept from us, and I would not let anyone keep it from my kids. So, I mean, it doesn't come out of love for him. It came out of anger to overcome this fear. And for another naval officer who said, you know, I love my kids. I love my daughter. And there was a scare that I was able to reach in and grab her once at a pool. But if she was out of arm's reach, I shudder to think what could have happened, that I could not have saved her, or that both of us could have perished. And so that love also overcame his own fear at some point. You know, I learned to swim with 0 lessons because I just was pissed off that all these kids were having fun in this pool and going off this diving board. And I wasn't allowed to go off the diving board because it was deep water. So I went anyway, and I just jumped without any clue just to get to the edge. And I did. But, you know, and I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of these kids to be rescued. So anger can help. So can love. And I think we want to be frank about why these statistics are so different between people of color and not. It sucks, but it's okay. We got to move forward. We aren't going to try to undo this somehow. We're going to try to offer free lessons and love in the pool, because the waters are coming at us right now. We have to learn this.
I think that's a marvelous segue to you, Eric. We've spoken about so many benefits of swimming, but we've overlooked a couple, right? Like Sudhir just said, we're surrounded by an increasing amount of water, and our ability to control our environment in some cases is strained quite severely. On the other hand, there's spiritual elements of swimming as well that need to be taken into consideration. Could you speak to how some of those characteristics play into your relationship with the water?
Yeah, so one thing I'll note is you probably heard me talk about it a little bit in terms of like a spiritual aspect of the water, but I really do think that it is a place where you can find yourself. And if you can approach it not only as a place of play, but as one of health. For me personally, gone through a fair amount of transitions in my life, and I don't think that I would have been able to, in each of those, come out the other side as well as I did without having access to the water and swimming to kind of help me through that. As a place where you can, there's very few places in the world right now where you can actually have the positive sensory deprivation that comes from being in the water and the ability to actually just kind of focus on yourself and get your mind right. And I think that's an element of swimming that's definitely overlooked. I mean, whether you were just following the blue line during swim practice or you are on a mile swim off Coney Island, you think through stuff in a way that you just don't when you were on land. And it may sound silly, but especially having spent time under the water as well, being like trained as a combat swimmer and a Navy SEAL, I can tell you that, second to maybe going up in space or to Antarctica, I think that going into the water and underneath it is the closest thing we can do to having ready access to an adventure. And we're not meant to be down there, but we do it anyway because we are land animals that have chosen to learn how to swim. And it's a very cool thing that we do. The other thing that I think would want to say is that swimming has indirectly led me to be able to acquire skills around leadership and working in a team, and also failing, which is a skill that is not talked about. I had the opportunity to do a relay swim of the English Channel on the D-Day anniversary. It was way too early to do it. It was way too cold, even though we were each doing only an hour segment each. And we didn't get to France. We raised a bunch of money, but it didn't happen. It's something that I would really like to change, whether in a team or as a relay or as an individual swim, before I die. But that was humbling. And I think that was an instance where, we had fun, we raised money. It was a good experience if you didn't hype out, which I didn't. We learned how to fail. It also teaches you how to kind of inspire and plan for the worst, right? So when I was in training, whether that's you figuring out the tides and when it makes sense for you to ride those in or out in terms of your mission planning, or figuring out dive tables for when and how long you can stay underwater or you need to decompress. There's a whole kind of waterfall of skills that come from building on that core. I can go in the water, be safe, tread water, and even go from A to B in a pretty efficient manner. That can come into play. And I think that you can really, really build accretively on those skills, and it can build confidence in a very, very cool way for you in terms of personal development.
Thank you, Eric. Barbara, you brought up that your background in the water is extensive. You've been involved in 23 Ironman. You've been to Kona, which is really like the Super Bowl of Ironman. I'm curious how, through all these experiences, you've likely experienced a sense of being in a precarious spot. How have you overcome that? And furthermore, how could that relate to the audience and how they overcome some of their fears, if there are any associated with the water?
Okay, well, I think swimming, as we had talked about, gives you a great deal of confidence. I do a great deal of open water swimming. So I have been in way different predicaments. I went out one day and wasn't a nice day out, so nobody was really sitting on the beach. And I went for a swim, and this big fog rolled in. And I said, oh, my God, my other lifeguards won't even know I'm gone for 2 days, And I got a little afraid, and I kind of kept my bearing, and I found my way in to the beach, and I walked back, and I was very, very happy. I've also been in some current situation. I've made some rescues in some very big waves. It gives you a confidence. It also gives you a little bit of smarts, saying, it's a little big today. I've just started surfing, which I love, but I can look out and say, oh, not for me today. I'm not ready for that. So it gives you a confidence to overcome a certain challenge, whether it's the current in Hawaii, whether it's cold water. I've done a couple Ironman and a couple of races. I went to the Netherlands and a couple of things. The water was cold. I don't like cold. But you say, okay, let's get through this. So swimming will give you that confidence. And sometimes you fail. The only race I think in probably 300 races, the only one I didn't finish was a swim race, and that because the water was cold. Everything else I seem to be able to stick out and finish. So I think swimming gives you a huge confidence and also experience. Being a triathlete, I do want to say, I think with the swim, people are not as experienced as they should be. I lifeguard the New York City Triathlon, and we pull out people all the time. They pay $400 for a race. They pay $300 for a wetsuit. They think the current is going to take them, and they can't swim because they don't give it the importance that it needs, or they only pool swim and they've never open water swim. So they swim all off course, and we pull people out all the time. Or people do 2 sprint tries and sign up for an Ironman, and they are nowhere near ready. And that is a scary. I've also a lifeguard at Ironman, and we pull people out who think they can do breaststroke the whole time. You don't breaststroke 2.4 miles. If you have to breaststroke it, you don't belong there. So there's 2 sides. It gives you confidence, but you need knowledge to know what your limit is and respect for the water. That, okay, you look up at Lake Placid, it's beautiful, the water's flat, but you can drown there. Your skill may not be there. So a lot of what I do is I teach the master swimmers. They can swim, but we teach them to swim better. And we do a lot of open water swimming. So when we do come to a race, they're ready for the open water challenge. I think it'd be nice to see USA Triathlon. They want people to race, so they encourage everyone to race, but a lot of people are not ready for that swim. And that to me is the scary part.
Barbara, could you also comment just a little bit on your work at the beach? So this year we heard about 2 people that were killed in lightning strikes, which we haven't heard about that in quite some time. So it was a little shocking, to have two of them and not too far apart. Our world is changing. So as a beach lifeguard, what are you seeing as it relates to the climate and the beach?
Okay, well, we've had a lot of changes this year. Usually we don't get any hurricanes till the very end of August. This year we had them much earlier. I've never seen Jones Beach flood like we have. And not just once, a couple times. I forget the storm's names, but Henri and I forget what the last one was, but where the beach actually flooded. I also see thunderstorms, and people don't realize the danger in them. We call them out of the water, but they don't get off the beach. They think they can just sit on the beach during the thunderstorm. I also let the kids play in the water. Kids in a puddle, they let them play in the puddle. We're like, no, get out, get off the beach. And they don't rush. They take their time. They sit there and say, well, it's not raining. I'm not getting off the beach. There's also an outdoor shower right by our boardwalk. They all go up and they go out and they shower under this thundering out and lightning, and they're under the outdoor shower. So they don't see this as dangerous at all. They're actually quite annoyed when we pull them out, when we whistle them out of the water. Why? It's not raining. Well, there's thunderstorms coming. You have to point out the big clouds. So that somewhere I would love to see some kind of education as, thunder, get out of your thunder, get out of the water, get to a safe place. They don't do it. And we've had so many more storms. We had shark sightings this year. We've never had that. It used to be a joke if the lifeguard said, hey, there's a shark in the water. That just meant you wanted everybody out, And we had it repeatedly. And we would call people out of the water and keep them out of the water for sharks. And then they get mad at us and they go in anyway. They don't care. Oh, no, it's fine. I'm going in anyway. They don't see the danger there. But we've never seen sharks before. There are sharks always in the ocean, but I have never seen them up close like we did this year. So I think that is all a huge part of climate change and the dangers that come with it, that people are ignorant of what safety goes along with that. Usually yell shark, everybody gets out of the water. No, they got out, turned around. I don't see one. They went right back in.
Noted.
Yeah.
I guess it falls under the umbrella of, we all know that bad things can and do happen, but to other people, until, of course, it happens to ourselves.
Right.
Well, As we approach our last question, this one is certainly most focused on SwimStrong as an organization and its mission. So as many on the panel and in the audience know, SwimStrong's focus is increasing water safety for all, right? For everyone out there. Any other factor, just introducing water safety and comfortability in the water. I'm curious why this mission resonates with each of the panelists this evening. So, please start us off.
Yeah, I think everyone has done a heck of a job. And Barbara, wow. I mean, some of those experiences are remarkable, especially the fog one. I would have never thought.
I'm going now, it's foggy.
You know, some of these examples point to the urgency and how important this organization is in every organization that are really making this a patchwork scenario. The legislative connections we have are really what's going to make this make a real difference. Again, I bring the thing back to vaccination. I can't knock on every door. I can't ask every patient. We didn't do this for MMR, diptat, polio, influenza, Haemophilus, et cetera. It just was made a requirement to go to school. And so if you didn't get these done, you would just be a very strange kid getting homeschooled. Now we're asking, and as a result, this virus is changing and we're, headed for variants that could make the entire thing moot. So it requires strong leadership to say, guys, this has to get done. And it's the same here, that I think we need federal leadership to give funding to you guys and organizations like us to build pools, to get people back into the importance of swimming for the love of it. And also because we're going to need this skill at a moment's notice. I mean, it's raining right now in New York City. There's a flash flood warning right now. That's irony. And it's also horrible. I mean, I've got water stains in this apartment where at the top of Manhattan. It's improbable. Things are changing so quick. That's the urgency, and that's why this organization is so important, I think, and its connections to legislation should really be inflamed.
Thank you. Barbara, why does this concept of increasing water safety for all resonate with you?
Oh my gosh, it's extremely important. I work at the beach all day, and I see people who have no judgment when it comes to the water. We see many people who cannot swim at all. They do not wear bathing suits to the beach. They go right in the water. I've made some big rescues this year. They go right in the water, not realizing that anything past your waist will pull you out. They have no idea what a rip current is. They have no idea that drinking a 6-pack of beer on the beach may impede your swimming ability. I think the biggest problem, they'll bring everything else to the beach. They bring coolers, they bring all the family, they bring huge speakers. They don't bring bathing suits, and they don't know how to swim. I think the heart of all of this comes down to making swimming a priority to the minority families. It's not important. I went to Bayside High School in Bayside, Queens. New York City Public School had a pool. You had to take a swimming class to pass, but to me, that's too late. If you're not teaching swimming until high school, these kids want to get through their 6 or 8 weeks of swimming, and that's it. The parents, it's not a priority to get these kids to swimming lessons. We have I live on Long Island now, there's a huge Asian population. Swimming is important. That's who shows up. You run a child swim tiny top program, that's who shows up. The parents may not be able to swim, but they're making sure their kids swim. It's a priority. I don't see that in the other minority groups. They love to go to the beach, but the swimming part of it is not important. And I wonder, how do you make that important?
Thank you, Barbara. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason it resonates with me is because every drowning death at the end of the day is avoidable. It's harm that doesn't need to happen. And it's like saying, no, I don't need to know swim. I don't need to wear my helmet. No, I don't want to know what the Heimlich maneuver is. No, I don't care to know what CPR is. These are very, very small things that you can do that can actually save a life. To actually be able to save a life is a really amazing thing to be able to do. And teaching someone how to swim can actually have that impact. And it's avoidable. And so that from that standpoint, for me, that's why it resonates with me so much, is that there's enough kind of randomized harm and kind of tragic events happening in our world as it is. These are avoidable, and it can be avoidable and also give you a skill that is both fun and kind of gives you an ability to build confidence in as well. And we should take advantage of that and support that mission.
Thank you, Eric. Jim.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what has been said already. This is all preventable. So it just seems that it makes no sense that we don't have more systems in place to prevent this from being an issue. Swimming should be an activity that is life-affirming, self-affirming, positive, a happy outcome. And I teach people how to swim. So having this opportunity to talk about this, being aligned with the foundation that is dedicated solely to that is, it's what I've made my profession out of. So I think that it's just, it's a noble effort, and there should be more like that for some of the other problems in the world as well. But I happen to, have an affinity for this because I've been teaching it for 38 years. So it really is, drowning is a senseless loss of life, and there's no reason for it, and it's easily preventable. And as Barbara indicated, it's not something that kids should learn when they're in high school. It's something that probably should be part of a preschool education.
Thank you for that. So before getting into closing remarks, just want to allow time for the panel to say anything that may have been overlooked through the questions asked that they feel important, that they feel is important to share. So I'll go on mute. If you'd like to say anything, great. If not, we'll carry on.
I do want to add that it would be nice to have some kind of political push to make swimming safety a priority. New York City has the largest lifeguard corps in the country, and they're only open from 10 to 6. Guess what happens at 6:05? People go in the water. But it's not important for the politicians in New York City to guard the beach longer. We are open, especially on the weekends, we're open till 8 o'clock at night. Most people go to the beach after work. City of Long Beach, well, they make their whole economy on the beach. They're only open until 6 o'clock. They're not open during the week in June. They're not guarded. So these are when these problems happen. So if the politicians feel that swimming is important, not only would they have more lifeguards, I have to say pay them better, pay them more than $15, $14 an hour, and then maybe that would lead into having some more free, accessible learn to swim program. Put the commercials on TV. Hey, get your kids in swimming, get your kids in swimming. I said for many of the families, it's not a priority. So it can be free and it can be accessible, but the parents don't even think of it. So there has to be a push to get the kids in the pool and teach them to swim before they go to the beach. Okay.
I might add that I think that there could be a better dissemination of information, because you do have the Swim Strong Foundation. Asphalt Green has a free Learn to Swim program. I know that many of the boys and girls swim clubs in New York City have Learn to Swim programs. I'm not sure that people are aware of that and take advantage of it. So I think that there needs to be a push from local community leaders to emphasize the importance of swimming as a life skill and to make people aware of the opportunities to learn how to swim, because I do think that they exist. I'm just not sure that we do a good enough job of letting people know about those.
Getting it out there. I worked for part of our lifeguarding. On Mondays, we had Learn to Swim. Free program. We had kids and toddlers and babies in the mornings, and we had adults at night, but nobody knew about it. Where was the advertising? You know, people didn't know about it. It was more of a word of mouth thing. I had a big full class of adults because I told them about it. They were all beginner triathletes that I teach, and I said, hey, come down and swim, but otherwise they had no idea. So I agree that people, like I'm saying, either TV commercials or something, people have to know that free swimming lessons are available. But you're definitely right. People don't have access, and if there are free programs, they don't know about it.
Sudhir?
My last name is Gadh. It's misspelled, but whatever. And it's, so some patients would say Dr. God, and I don't mind getting a kick out of that. But let me bring it to that angle and say a couple things. Before Jesus could walk on water, he had to swim in it. And what I see is we have to also use the spiritual pathway here, not only pragmatically with the use of temples, churches, mosques, etc., but to say that, the earth is really a living being. It's not a rock that we're on. It gave us birth, technically. It has allowed us to evolve. And if we really want to be symbiotic beings instead of parasitic beings, which we are behaving like, and it's letting us know, obviously, we've given it a fever. And so it's has sent its own immune system armies against us. But if we really want to get to symbiosis with it, we have to connect with it. The water is the portal. It is the blood of the planet. It is the way to connect with it. That's the macro view.
Thank you for that. So in closing here, just want to say what a delight it was to meet you all through the panel and to be motivated through many of your stories. Everyone on this panel is either serving our community, or our country, or has done so in some capacity, whether that's through our military, whether that's through monitoring our beaches, whether that's through teaching students, or representing our nation in sport. So with that, immense gratitude to you all. Thank you for the privilege of being able to be a moderator tonight. Sean, over to you for closing remarks.
And I'll echo that. Thanks to that Dan so eloquently spoke to. You guys rock. Thank you. Thank you so much for the continued support. We don't do this alone. We do this in concert with all of you. And I just want to reflect a little bit on the fact that, we live in New York State, and we're blessed with all sorts of different types of water, right? So we have the Great Atlantic Ocean, we have the Great Lakes, and we have smaller lakes. We've got the mighty Hudson, and we've got smaller rivers. We've got waterfalls. We have streams. We've got ponds. We've got canals. We have municipal pools. We have backyard swimming pools, right? And all of those different types of water are unique. They have different behaviors, different dangers, different characteristics. And so, we need to understand them all very differently. Everywhere around the globe, people are experiencing the same thing that we're experiencing here. Our weather patterns are changing, right? The storms are not only becoming stronger, the season is becoming longer, and the recovery time for those communities that are on the front end of these storms is even less. So we have that issue going on. We have our water levels, which have been rising an inch and a half a year for the last 12 to 15 years. And even our municipalities, many municipalities across the country, are developing waterfronts as never before. And so that's fabulous for people who have the knowledge of that particular type of water, and of course the swimming skills to be able to safely navigate it. But certainly in a city like New York, we have many more of our citizens who don't have that positive combination. And so I'm so concerned that our drowning rates, will be increasing. And I think also, really, all of us definitely have to understand that having environmental water safety knowledge is just critical to keep us safe in, on, and around the water. Having strong swimming skills definitely helps us navigate those challenges and certainly provides us with the additional bonus of keeping healthy, as was mentioned a number of times this evening. After all, there's really no activity that is not only life-saving, but also provides a full body workout, as swimming does. So for health, safety, recreation, competition, career opportunities, nothing does a body good as much as swimming does. And our Swim Strong volunteers have developed such impressive results over the past 15 years. But again, it certainly doesn't happen without the support of our volunteers and also the financial support of everyone who believes in this cause. So understand that your donations certainly save lives. That's very real. And please, if you would demonstrate that support by donating through our celebration, you can do so on our website at swimstrongfoundation.org/donate. But know that you join us in partnership and fellowship with making a change that's positive for all. So thank you again, and wish you good health and great swimming. Good night.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Bye.